Have you ever felt like you were giving your all, and no one seemed to care? You worked quietly, you endured, you grew, but somehow they still chose to listen to the louder ones. You stayed silent so you wouldn't hurt anyone. And yet, they used your silence to judge you. And sometimes you start to wonder, do I need to scream just to be seen? Is this world only for those who shout the loudest? No. The truth is, the world doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the one who stays silent but cannot be shaken. In this video, you won't be taught how to grab attention or how to convince the world to understand you. You'll learn how to return, how to live truthfully, and how to build an inner strength so still it doesn't need to prove anything. Rooted in Stoic philosophy and inspired by real stories that reach the soul, you'll walk through 12 chapters, observing your own reactions, to protecting your personal energy, to nurturing silent dreams that don't need validation to matter, and finally, how to command presence without raising your voice. And if today you're tired of having to act strong, if you want to learn how to live deeply quietly and still carry the strength of an underground river, then this journey is for you. Don't leave the video, because just one chapter might remind you you don't need to be seen anymore. You just need to come home to yourself. 1. The first battle is within, mastering your inner reaction. There are moments so small, they pass unnoticed by others, but inside you, they stir a storm, a cold glance, a snide comment, a short, sharp message that bruises your pride. Suddenly, your blood rises, your throat tightens, your chest constricts. It's like a fire, uninvited, and instinct pushes you to respond, argue, defend, prove you're not weak, make them regret it. But then what? After the heated words, the anger, the flood of emotion, what remains? Emptiness, a heaviness, that quiet regret that whispers, you lost yourself. And in that moment, it becomes painfully clear. The first battle isn't with them. It's always been inside your own mind. Stoicism doesn't teach you how to clap back. It teaches you how to not need to. It offers no clever tricks to win debates, only a mirror to help you see yourself more clearly before saying anything at all. To the Stoics, the strongest person isn't loud or quick with words. It's the one who can feel everything and still remain unmoved. Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself in war camps, said, "Today you will meet people who are ignorant, arrogant, ungrateful." He didn't complain. He didn't curse the world. He simply acknowledged it and remained steady. He chose calm. He chose clarity. He chose not to let their chaos steal his inner peace, because in every moment you have a choice. To react, to respond. Reaction is fast, emotional, automatic. But a response is different. A response requires intention. It starts with a breath. It asks, is this reaction necessary? It turns chaos into choice, like a seasoned sailor, not shouting into the storm, but adjusting the sail in silence. And the best part? You don't need a philosophy degree to do this. Just 3 simple words. Pause, breathe, reframe, pause. In that exact moment when anger rises, don't move, don't speak, just stop. Like standing still in a cathedral, staring at the stained glass as morning light filters through. You don't need to do anything. Just let stillness settle in. Breathe. Inhale slowly. Let the air flow through you like cool water. Let it wash away the heat, not to escape, but to return. Each breath says, I'm still here, and I'm staying with myself. Reframe, not to excuse them, but to remind yourself, you don't control them, you only control you. And you can choose stillness over ego, silence over reaction. Strength not in what you say, but in what you refuse to let shake you. Winning a fight may feel good for a moment, but winning your own mind, that's how real freedom begins. 2. Silence is not weakness. It's the ultimate form of strength. Silence, a word that seems simple, but in truth, it's one of life's hardest disciplines. In a world that values volume, speed, and sharp replies, silence is often seen as weakness or defeat. But the Stoics teach something different. For them, silence is an act of mastery. It's when you no longer need to be loud, to be right, or to be praised. You don't disappear, you simply stop wasting energy trying to be heard by those who can't listen. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." To the untrained mind, it sounds like giving up, but to someone who understands themselves, it's a kind of power that doesn't ask for applause. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Let not your mind be a warehouse of idle words. Speak only what is essential. Keep the rest for silence." Because to the Stoics, what you don't say often speaks loudest of all. Silence isn't born from emptiness, it's born from clarity. It comes when you feel so deeply, so fully, that you no longer need to prove anything through your reaction. Picture this. You post something heartfelt, a reflection, a moment of kindness. Then someone replies, mocking you, twisting your words. Your chest tightens. Your mind fills with things you want to say. You feel the pull to defend yourself, but you don't. You pause. You take one long breath. And in that breath, something returns. A deeper knowing that you don't need to respond. Not because you're afraid, but because you've grown. You've stopped needing validation from those who were never meant to understand you. In that moment, silence becomes strength, not submission, but stillness chosen over noise. The Stoics call this self-control, and it doesn't happen all at once. It's a quiet discipline, trained daily in the smallest moments, when you're misunderstood, but don't rush to explain. When you're insulted, but choose not to fire back. When you're misjudged, and still live your truth anyway. Each quiet decision sharpens your character like a lone warrior practicing at night, not for attention, but for the strength to remain upright when the time comes. Picture yourself in a quiet chapel. No one speaks. The light through the stained glass softens the room. You sit on a wooden bench, not to be seen, not to be saved, just to listen. And in that space you realize no one has to agree with your truth. No one even needs to know. What matters is that you know, and in that knowing you return to yourself. This kind of silence isn't passive, it's sacred. It's a ritual, a whisper to yourself. I don't need to win them. I just need to not lose me. You don't say it aloud, but you live it. You don't react, but you've already decided. Because silence is not retreat. It's a quiet kind of triumph. And when you practice it long enough, you'll notice the things that matter most are always born in stillness. 3. Stop needing to be seen. You have nothing to prove. Are you living just to be seen? Not in the physical sense, but in that subtle craving to be acknowledged, to be noticed, to feel confirmed. That quiet desire for others to admit that you're doing well, that you're enough. Have you ever posted something not just to share, but secretly hoping that someone specific would see it, would comment, would admire it? Maybe we've all done it, living not because we're truly alive, but because we want to be remembered, to be approved, to be validated by someone else's eyes. But those who continue walking the inner path come to realize a softer truth, that living to be seen is one of the most exhausting ways to live, because in trying to impress, trying to hold a perfect image, trying not to be forgotten, you slowly give away what's most sacred, your presence. You spend your energy maintaining perception instead of inhabiting your actual life. You're so focused on being seen that you no longer truly see yourself. The Stoics understood this long before social media or fame. They saw that reputation belongs to others, not to you. Epictetus said, "If you wish to grow, don't waste energy on the thoughts of others." What you can control isn't applause, it's your own conscience. Because the moment you tie your peace to being seen, you place your identity in someone else's hands. If they praise you, you rise. If they ignore you, you fade. And just like that, you become a reflection, not a person. But some choose differently. They live quietly, not to hide, but to stay rooted in who they are. Take Craig Modd. He's not famous in the usual sense, but through his self-published books, slow solo walks across Japan, and handwritten letters to a small, loyal circle, he's built something lasting. Not through exposure, but through sincerity. He walks to notice, writes to feel, shares to connect, not to perform. And because of that, people pause, because his work doesn't shout. It resonates. From that stillness, you can ask, what would change if you no longer lived to be noticed? If you acted because something inside you said yes, even if no one applauded? If you created because it brought you peace, not attention? If you walked your days with quiet dignity, not to be admired, but because it felt aligned with your truth? That's when life softens. You stop running, you stop proving. You may show up less in crowded spaces, but you show up fully in your own. You no longer chase praise because you've learned to stand still and present in yourself. And in that presence, you begin to see yourself clearly, kindly, as someone worth knowing, even if no one else notices. When you stop needing to be seen, something beautiful begins. You become free. You no longer have to perform, or defend, or reach. And in that quiet freedom, you begin to glow, not loudly, but undeniably. 4. A Stoic doesn't react. He observes, understands, and responds. What do you mean by that? Are you criticizing me? No, I'm just sharing my opinion. Oh, please, you always act like you know better than everyone else. We've all been in conversations like that, when a simple comment, neutral in tone, suddenly becomes a spark. When the person in front of you isn't really listening to understand, but just waiting for their turn to push back. And maybe, if we're honest, we've been on both sides, the one misunderstood and the one who reacted without thinking things through. Reaction is the first thing instinct teaches us. It's fast, loud, and gives us a false sense of power. But the Stoics chose a different path. They don't react, they observe. They watch, they study. Then they respond, not from pride, but from clarity. This isn't weakness. This is strength with restraint. A refusal to be dragged into every fight just because someone poked your ego. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, if someone hurts you, they're likely hurting in ways you can't see. So instead of retaliating, understand. That's why Stoics turn inward. They examine their thoughts before they turn outward to judge the world. A Stoic doesn't reply quickly. They let words float past, like a breeze. They let emotion rise and settle, like ripples in a pond after a stone drops. Only once the surface clears do they look below to see what's really happening. Observer don't, absorb. That is their discipline. But in real life, this isn't easy. You'll face moments when you know you're right. You'll hear comments that feel like attacks. You'll sense tones meant to belittle. And a part of you will rise up, wanting to fight, to be heard, to be respected. But then you pause. Not because you're weak, but because you've learned. Your peace isn't worth trading just to prove a point. So how do you know when to speak and when to stay silent? Speak when your words will bring clarity, not to win, but to connect. Speak when the truth must be spoken, and you can do so without losing your calm. But choose silence when your ego wants soothing, when they're not ready to hear you, when your own heart is still on fire, because fiery hearts can't speak gently. One quiet way to train this is by keeping a reaction journal. Every time you react too quickly, write it down. What happened? How did it feel? Did your words help or just echo pain? Would you choose differently now? As you write, you'll see the truth. Many of your reactions come from old wounds, not this moment. And only through awareness can you stop the past from speaking on your behalf. A Stoic doesn't go silent because they're empty. They choose silence when words are no longer wise. They don't avoid conflict, but they never let others steer their emotions. Because reaction is a gift you give away, but self-control is the gift you keep. 5. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It's a sacred act of discipline. There's a common misunderstanding in modern society that if you turn inward, take time for yourself, and focus on your inner growth, you're being selfish. But that belief is dangerous, because if you don't know how to care for your own soul, to protect your own mind, to quietly nurture the depth within you, then you will have nothing strong enough left to give anyone else. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean shutting out the world. It's not withdrawal, it's a form of spiritual discipline, like retreating into a quiet room just to listen for the whisper of God within your chest. It's not disconnection, it's rebuilding a bridge inside you that no one has walked across in a very long time. And once that bridge is whole again, only then can you step into the world without losing yourself in it. The Stoics understood this well. To them, a person who doesn't examine themselves daily is someone living passively. They encouraged self-auditing, kind of nightly soul check-in, not to punish oneself, but to protect the light within. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this almost every night, reviewing which ideals he lived by, where he strayed, how he treated others. And he didn't write to impress. He wrote to wake up. He wrote to come home. You can begin with a very simple question each evening. Did I live today as the kind of person I want to become? Did I honor the values I believe in? Did I overreact, chase emotion, or forget what truly matters? And if so, what can I do better tomorrow? When you build that habit day by day, you'll start to realize focusing on yourself is not selfish. It's how you keep your soul from scattering. And that's when you begin to live with true presence. Rick Rubin, legendary music producer behind timeless works from Johnny Cash, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Adele's, a living embodiment of this. In a loud, competitive, ego-driven music industry, he lives like a sage. He avoids the spotlight, speaks rarely, proves nothing. He lives slowly, listens deeply, eats simply, walks barefoot, meditates, and from that stillness, he creates art that touches the deepest parts of people. He doesn't chase the world. He returns to himself, and the world comes to him not because he sought it, but because he became so purely himself. He could not be ignored. When you look at Rick Rubin, you don't see selfishness. You see reverence for life's journey, for the sacred space within, where real music, real emotion, and real truth are born. And you realize, the world doesn't need you to sacrifice yourself to be loved. It needs you to live truthfully so it can believe in what's real. So, if anyone has ever made you feel guilty for choosing yourself, please don't believe them. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to answer every message right away. You don't need to always show up in conversations that don't nourish you. Sometimes, your refusal to engage is how you protect your own awakening. To focus on yourself is to live as if your soul matters. as if your life is a candle worth keeping lit. No one else can tend that flame for you, only you, each day, through small, sacred acts. Through every pause where you ask, am I living in alignment with who I am? And that question, not applause, will be the anchor that holds you steady in the storm. 6. Don't let the world's noise drown out your inner compass. Picture a typical morning in our time. Before your feet touch the ground, your hand reaches for the phone. The screen lights up messages, notifications, a post going viral, a headline shouting about another crisis, a comment that quietly stings. And before you've taken your first full breath, your mind no longer belongs to you. What we call mental noise is no longer abstract. It's a real stormer, constant downpour of news, opinions, comparisons, pressure, and digital obsession. You know everything about everyone else, but forget the rhythm of your own soul. You tell yourself it's just 10 minutes of escape, but by the time you look up, you've lost a part of your presence. And what's frightening is we've become so used to this noise, we don't even notice it anymore. We don't realize that most of the anxiety and fatigue we carry doesn't come from real life, but from a curated digital world that overwhelms us with what we can't control. We call it freedom of access. But how free are we, really, if we no longer choose what's worthy of entering our minds? The Stoics faced a different kind of noise palace gossip, flattery, political tension. Marcus Aurelius called it soul garbage. And every day he reminded himself, keep your mind clear, for it is the place your soul resides. Today, the garbage arrives not from whispers in the court, but from the persistent tapping of tiny icons. If you don't choose what to let in, the world will choose for you, and you'll slowly lose more than focus, you'll lose direction. Have you ever done so much, read so much, consumed so much, but remembered nothing? Have you ever ended the day with a strange emptiness, as if something slipped through your fingers, but you can't name what? That's when the noise has grown so loud, you can no longer hear your own voice. But you don't need a radical escape, just a quiet choice. The world will no longer decide the quality of your attention. Begin with 30 quiet minutes in the morning and 30 more before bed. No screens, no updates, just a notebook, a warm drink, and one question: where is my soul going today? Let the world knock. But you decide whether to open. Filter what you consume, read with care, listen with purpose, watch with discernment. Spend time in healing solitude, walk with no sound, a window and your breath, a journal entry without urgency. This isn't old-fashioned. It's how you protect your humanity, your stillness, your soul. Stoicism doesn't ask you to escape the world. It asks you to stay grounded within it. It doesn't reject information. It reminds you, your mind is sacred space, and you should never let anything enter without your permission. And when silence returns, sit down, not to reply, but to ask, if all the noise stopped, what would still belong to me? 7. When you're silent, the world starts to listen. Some people don't speak much. They don't dominate conversations. They don't rush to correct every misunderstanding. And yet, when they walk into a room, something shifts. There's a stillness that settles not because of status, but because of presence. A quiet groundedness that makes people instinctively pause, even if no one tells them to. I saw this most clearly in an old interview with Keanu Reeves. He sat in the middle of chaos, banter, jokes, rapid-fire questions, and said nothing for a long time. But he wasn't nervous. He was still. It felt like the world was rushing by, and he simply didn't need to chase it. And when he finally did speak one simple sentence, the room fell silent. Not because he demanded attention, but because his silence had created a space where listening became natural. That kind of silence doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from deep self-awareness, from knowing that not every reaction deserves a reply, that sometimes the greatest authority isn't expressed through words, but through restraint. Years ago, during a meeting, someone misread my point and challenged me publicly. My ego flared. I wanted to explain, to win, but I stayed silent. Not because I lacked a response, but because I realized speaking would only serve pride, not progress. I simply nodded and let it pass. Later that day, the same colleague approached me. He put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Thanks for not escalating that. I thought about it, and I see your point now." Had I spoken in the moment, I might have been right, but I wouldn't have earned his reflection. It wasn't my argument that reached him. It was the space I left behind. Silence, when chosen intentionally, is not weakness. It's strategy. It's power. It's a refusal to scatter your energy just to be heard. In a world obsessed with noise, the one who knows how to pause becomes the one others listen to most. You don't need to stay silent forever. But try this. Before every meaningful response, pause for 3 seconds. It sounds small, but it's enough time to shift from reaction to reflection. Enough time to ask, is this necessary, or is this just ego? If you master that, something changes. When you no longer need to speak, people begin to truly listen. When you stop swimming with the current, you don't vanish, you become the quiet stone that stills the water. And that kind of silence echoes longer than any speech. So ask yourself, when was the last time your presence spoke louder than your voice? And next time you have the choice to speak or stay still, what will you choose? 8. Comparison is the thief of inner peace. There are days when you genuinely feel like you're making progress. You wake a little earlier, drink water instead of rushing for coffee, read a few pages from a book before grabbing your phone, and something inside feels lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, you're finally choosing yourself. A quiet calm settles in, as if you've stopped trying to please the world and started living for you. But then, with one glance at social media, a friend announcing a big contract, a stranger posting a fairy tale wedding, a colleague on stage in the field you've been quietly working toward, suddenly, you no longer feel like you're moving forward. You just feel behind. Comparison doesn't shout. It whispers softly, steadily, until it takes everything. The feeling of, "I'm not enough," doesn't come from failure. It comes from seeing others succeed, not because they don't deserve it, but because you haven't yet learned to sit still with your soul without scanning for where others are standing. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "A trained mind isn't distracted by what others are doing. It only asks, am I living by my own principles?" This doesn't tell you to reject the world. It invites you to place a hand on your chest and ask, am I walking my path with truth, or chasing glitter, hoping it hides the fear that I'm not yet whole? The Stoics didn't ignore others, but they refused to let anyone else become the ruler of their worth. To them, the only comparison that matters is with yesterday's self, when you were less grounded, less kind, less honest with your heart. They believed each of us is born with a rhythm of our own, and if you measure your beat by someone else's drum, you'll forget your song. You can shift this through practice. Instead of listing people who trigger your insecurity, write down 3 ways you've grown. Maybe today you paused before reacting. Maybe you honored a boundary. Maybe you forgave yourself. These wins may not be seen, but they matter, and you need to see them long enough to remember. Private progress is as real as any public praise. The truth is, you don't know what they've walked through to shine in that one moment. You don't see the sleepless nights, the losses, the quiet grief they never shared. You see the highlight. And then you compare that to your unfiltered self-raw. imperfect, in process, and conclude you're behind. But is that a fair comparison? Life is not a race with equal starting lines. Everyone runs a different path, under different skies, with different weights. Some begin earlier, some carry more, some stop not to win, but to remember how to breathe. And when you truly see this, you soften. You stop needing to become someone else. You begin becoming, quietly, courageously, yourself. So if today someone else's joy makes you flinched, don't punish yourself. Just return, sit down, write 3 small things you did better than yesterday, and then ask gently, in a world obsessed with noise, can I still choose peace? 9. Your quiet actions will speak louder than their loud opinions. We live in an age where words often echo louder than actions. People declare their goals, announce their values, speak of change, then quietly abandon the work, as if saying something out loud is already enough. But the truth is, the world is not healed by declarations. It is healed by what's done in silence, by what's lived, by what's followed through without fanfare. There's a delicate line between sharing to inspire and speaking just to be seen. You can say you're helping someone, but if your words outshine your actions, it becomes hollow. Meanwhile, there are people who move without announcement. They don't post, they don't proclaim. Yet every step they take leaves behind a quiet trail of kindness, and that's what truly remains in people's memory. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Don't spend your energy proving what matters to you. Live it so others feel it, even when you say nothing at all. One man who's embodied this quietly for years is Jose Andres, a world-renowned chef, but in times of disaster he doesn't stand behind microphones. He doesn't seek applause. He simply shows up. He and his team at World Central Kitchen arrive in the aftermath of war, hurricanes and earthquakes, and cook meals for those with nothing left. No banners, no headlines, just the sound of pots simmering over makeshift fires. And sometimes that's the only sound strong enough to comfort a shaken heart. Jose never spoke his values. He cooked the own meal at a time, and the world began to notice not because he shouted, but because he acted consistently, without needing recognition. There is immense strength in silent action. It frees you from the need to prove anything. It removes the weight of needing to be seen, and that makes you steady, quiet, but undeniable. You can start small. Write down something you want to do, but don't post it. Don't announce it. Begin, step by step, quietly. Let the results speak for you. They always will, more clearly than any speech ever could. Ask yourself, how many things have you once talked about, but never finished? And how many things have you done in silence that became defining moments of your life? People can challenge your opinions, dismiss your dreams, ignore your words. But no one can argue with a finished act. A warm meal handed to someone cold. A gentle message when no one asked. A quiet habit you've kept for years, long after others forgot. These are the real milestones. So if you're doing something now, something real, something right even if no one's watching, don't stop, because the loudest truths are not declared. They are lived. 10. Not everyone deserves to hear your dreams before they're ready. Maybe you've carried a dream in your heart, not big, not loud, but bright enough to light a quiet fire in you every morning, something you've never done before, an idea just beginning to take shape, and if given enough stillness, you can feel it stirring beneath the surface, like a seed slowly waking underground. But then, you tell someone, and in that moment, the light starts to fade. Maybe they didn't mean harm, just a passing remark. Sounds nice, But is it even realistic? Or worse, you doing that? They weren't there during the long nights you couldn't sleep. They never felt the heartbeat quicken whenever the dream crossed your mind. But with a few words careless or cutting, they planted a seed of doubt. And suddenly, the dream doesn't burn the way it did before. We often think that sharing our dreams brings support, but the truth is, a dream is like a delicate flame in winter, and unless you've built a ring of stone to guard it, even a small gust of disbelief can blow it out before it ever takes hold. The Stoics understood this. They practiced premeditatio malora mentally, preparing for all that could go wrong, not to avoid dreaming, but to build the strength to carry one. Before telling the world, they asked, what if I'm laughed at, ignored? What if no one believes in this? And if the dream could survive that, then maybe it was ready. So when something begins to call you, nurture it first. Like a gardener shielding fragile sprouts in a greenhouse before facing the open wind. You don't need to announce. You don't need to prove or seek approval. You only need to begin, one quiet action at a time, and each of those small steps becomes a foundation until one day the dream is undeniable. You could call it discipline, or maybe sacred protection for something still becoming. Silence in this case isn't hesitation, it's reverence. It's space where your dream can grow without fear of being judged too soon. Because the most meaningful things in life are rarely born through applause, but in silence deep enough to hear your own voice rise. Think back how many ideas have faded not because you lacked skill, but because you revealed them too early. How many dreams stopped at the starting line, not from failure, but from someone else's doubt? And if you had the chance again, what would you keep quietly yours, until it was strong enough that no one could take it away? The world doesn't need to know what you're growing. They only need to see the bloom when the season is yours. Not early, not late, not for praise, not for permission. Just you and the quiet power of a dream that made it through the dark and into the light. So if you're holding something inside, still unpolished, still unsure, please protect it. Gently, quietly, steadily, and when it's ready, let your actions be the only introduction your dream will ever need. 11. Guard your energy like a stoic, selective, intentional, unshakable. And once you've learned how to nurture your dreams in silence, you'll arrive at a deeper truth. Not everyone deserves access to your inner energy. Just like a garden with tender shoots, you can't allow just anyone to wander through and trample the soil. Your energy is the same, it's a sacred resource. And if you don't protect it with care, the world will pull it in every direction, often for things you never consciously chose. In Stoic philosophy, energy isn't about surface-level motivation or chasing high vibes. It's sacred discipline. It's the ability to direct your inner life like a river with precision, not chaos. It doesn't flood, it flows with purpose. It doesn't soak barren ground. It nurtures only what's capable of growing. The biggest energy drain isn't crisis, it's leakage. The tiny daily losses, a comment that lingers in your head all night, a pointless debate you replay in the shower, a message you didn't want to answer, but did. A social feed that shakes your center, a headline you can't change but carry like a stone. Every time you explain yourself to someone who never truly listened, you give away a piece of your stillness. Every time you engage in a conversation you already knew would lead nowhere, you trade vitality for noise. And the worst part? We call it normal. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" It's not just a time-saving hack. It's a gate, and your spirit is what stands behind it. Guarding your energy isn't withdrawal. It isn't fear. It's discernment. It's knowing what belongs inside and what must remain at the edge. It's the quiet strength of someone who values their peace more than approval. Not everyone gets access to your calm. Not everyone should. Picture the soul as a temple, and you the gatekeeper. Every time you choose silence over reaction, every time you say no to what depletes, every time you return to breath instead of battle, that's not avoidance, that's sovereignty. So today, try this. Write down 3 things you'll no longer give energy to. Not to shame the past, but to honor the future. To remind yourself, you choose what enters the temple now. Maybe it's people who drain and never refill. Maybe it's habits that clutter your mornings. Maybe it's the reflex to explain your truth to those unwilling to hear it. You don't control everything, but you control this, what stays within. And from that quiet decision, peace begins to grow, not in noise, not in speed, but in stillness, and that will always be enough. 12. True greatness doesn't shout. It moves silently and consistently. There's a kind of person who walks into a room and doesn't demand attention. They don't glow with artificial charm. They don't try to shift the energy. They don't need to prove themselves, but they carry something else presence. Still, grounded, deep, and by the end of the day, after the boldest voices have gone quiet and every performance has faded, the one thing people remember is them. That's true greatness, the kind that doesn't ask to be declared. It doesn't seek the spotlight. It doesn't rely on persuasion. It lives in repetition day after day in quiet devotion to what is right, rather than what is noticed. Makoto Fujimura is one of those rare individuals, an artist, a philosopher, a man who chose silence as his method and stillness as his teacher. In a world of noisy galleries and cutthroat exhibitions, Makoto stepped aside from the stream. He paints with Japanese mineral pigments, each hue ground from precious stone, each layer laid gently, patiently, like a prayer. A single piece might take months, sometimes years. He doesn't rush, he doesn't chase relevance. But people pause before his workers if the silence within it calls to something they forgot they needed. Fujimura doesn't chase greatness. He simply commits to one breath, one brushstroke, one faithful tomorrow. And in that quiet constancy, he has created something that speaks across time. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius never wrote meditations for applause. He wrote it alone by lamplight, on the edge of Warnot, to be read, but to remain centered. And yet those words, written in solitude, have become timeless. Because when something is made in inner truth, it never expires. So if you're searching for what last, stop trying to impress. Stop performing. Instead, begin doing the right thing quietly, again and again. It doesn't need to be heroic. Maybe it's waking earlier, stretching, writing one sentence, or pausing before you speak. Each moment is a carving, a shaping, a layering of something invisible, but real, something that can't be shaken. Because greatness isn't in the heights you reach. It's in what you return to when no one's watching, when no one claps, when others quit. Think of the tall tree in the woods. No one watches it grow, but year after year, it holds, it shelters, it endures, and that too is greatness. And if you've stayed with this journey to the end, perhaps it's not because you want to stand out, but because deep down you've been longing to stand true. Maybe you're tired of explaining, tired of holding up an image, tired of trying to be enough for people who were never really listening. But now, something has shifted. Now you know peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from understanding yourself so clearly that you no longer feel the need to explain at all. You've learned that silence is not weakness, that what you repeat in stillness quietly, patiently, is far more powerful than what you shout for recognition. You've begun protecting your energy for what truly matters. You've realized that a dream must be strong before the world sees it. And you've started to sense that greatness doesn't appear in grand declarations, but in the soft, steady steps of those who keep going, even when no one is watching. Stoicism doesn't promise comfort. It offers you a compass, a way to stay upright when everything around you tilts, a way to root yourself deeper, even when the world screams louder, a way to hear the truth, not out there but within. So if you leave with only one truth, let it be this: greatness is not declared, it is practiced quietly, consistently, without needing to be seen. From this moment on, don't declare, don't explain. Build, quietly, patiently, in silence. And if a single line from this video touched something in you, leave it in the comments, not to perform, but as a quiet marker of your return. It doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be true.